I used to believe in loyalty until I had a heart attack from what I saw. My name is Marcus. I'm 35, and for most of my adult life, I played by the rules. I worked hard, climbed the ladder, built a reputation on integrity, married the woman I thought I'd grow old with. I met her on a Tuesday afternoon at an internal strategy session. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was filling in for someone from HR. She looked at me like she already knew me. 6 months later, we were inseparable. A year in, we moved in together. 18 months after that, I proposed. I remember that moment. We were standing barefoot on the deck of a cabin in Vermont, surrounded by autumn trees and silence. I told her she made me feel like I finally understood peace. She cried, said she'd never felt more sure of anything in her life. Looking back, maybe she meant it. Maybe it was true, for a time. Maybe she really did love me. But love without loyalty is just a promise waiting to break. We were married for nearly 4 years. 4 years of inside jokes and movie nights, and just 5 more minutes in bed. We fought, sure. Who doesn't? Ours were the kind that ended in whispered apologies and forehead kisses. She used to say I made her feel safe. That part always stuck with me. I worked at a global tech firm. One of those sleek, glass-heavy campuses with espresso bars on every floor and enough buzzwords to make your head spin. I wasn't the CEO, but I wasn't far off either. Vice President of Strategy. Trusted by the board. Known for delivering. Groomed for something bigger. And then there was Damian Cole. The man who hired me. Who mentored me. The man who sat across from me in every major meeting and toasted every big win with aged scotch and a smirk that always seemed half hidden behind polished teeth. But after some time, Damian was promoted to Chief Executive Officer. That was when everything started to crack. Glances that lasted too long. Conversations that ended when I entered the room. Claire started working out more. Staying out later. Said she was consulting for a startup. I believed her. It was a Wednesday night. I was working late at the office. The building was nearly empty. I'd forgotten my laptop charger in the main conference room. As I turned the corner, I heard her voice. Claire. I paused. She was laughing, flirty. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months. I stepped quietly toward the door, which was cracked open just enough. She was standing with her back to me, leaning slightly toward someone. He said something I couldn't quite make out, and then she touched his arm. I felt something sharp twist in my chest. And then I saw him. Damian. His hand was low on her back, too low for casual. He looked at her the way I used to. And in that moment, I realized Damian was already here. I didn't confront them that night. I just left. I drove around for 2 hours, radio off, hands shaking on the wheel. I stopped for gas and stared blankly at the pump before realizing I'd already filled the tank. I didn't sleep, because here's the thing about being betrayed by someone you love it. I needed proof. So I did what I do best. I strategized. Damian had just been handed the biggest responsibility of his career, a billion-dollar international acquisition that could either skyrocket the company's value or destroy it if it went sideways. And I knew secrets. I knew how things worked behind closed doors. This was just the beginning. The next day, Claire lay in bed, her breathing soft, one arm draped lazily across my chest like nothing had happened. Like everything was still the same. But everything had changed. And I wasn't the same man she married anymore. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I played my part. Made coffee. Kissed her on the forehead. Listened to her tell me about her client call later that evening. A dinner downtown with investors she had supposedly just met through her freelance work. I smiled and nodded. Because that's what she expected from me. The dependable husband. The fool. I wore that mask well. Back at the office, I began to watch Damian more closely. He'd always been careful. Slick, even. He was the kind of executive who kept 2 phones, used secure lines for anything sensitive, and played every angle like a chessboard. But no one's perfect. The opportunity came quicker than I expected. Our company's IT head, Philip, had been with us for over a decade. Quiet guy, loyal to the bone. We'd shared war stories over whiskey after late product launches, helped each other through more than one round of layoffs. And he owed me a favor. So I asked. Nothing major. Nothing illegal. Just metadata. I needed access to Damian's official calendar, travel records, and any communications tied to the acquisition project. Philip didn't ask too many questions. Sent me an encrypted file within the hour. That night, I poured a drink, locked myself in my home office, and opened the folder. What I found didn't just confirm my suspicion. It ignited something inside me I didn't know I was capable of. Damien had been billing the company for personal travel, 2 separate weekend trips to Napa under the guise of off-site strategic planning, both logged during dates Claire had told me she was out of town for freelance meetings. Same cities, same dates, matching timelines. He was using corporate funds to pay for luxury hotels, 5-star dinners, and private drivers. But that wasn't the worst of it. He used my name as the cover story. He'd listed me as a participant in those meetings, said I was part of the strategic planning sessions, that I'd approved expenses, that we'd both signed off on the receipts. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heartbeat a slow, steady drum. He wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using me as a shield. Over the next week, I gathered more. I pulled phone logs, searched press drafts, and scoured the due diligence reports on the upcoming deal. The deeper I went, the more tangled it got. Turns out Damien wasn't just unethical. He was reckless. He had a history of backdoor side deals, gray area consulting payments, and partnerships with third-party vendors who were set to profit massively if this acquisition went through. Vendors he failed to disclose to the board. Vendors tied to shell companies. Now I had everything I needed. And soon, proof of conflict of interest that could derail the deal and destroy Damien's career. But I didn't send it in right away. No, that would have been too easy. I wanted him, and Claire, to feel safe first. Because nothing stings like a blindside when you think the worst is over. Meanwhile, at home, I started to play along. I asked Claire about her day, offered to rub her shoulders after her long meetings, pretended to be tired when she initiated intimacy, and watched the flicker of guilt cross her face when I gently said I wasn't in the mood. Every night, I lay beside her, thinking of every time she told me she loved me, every lie she whispered into my ear while he touched her. And I made a choice. One night, she came home later than usual. I was sitting on the couch, laptop open, pretending to work. She walked in, cheeks flushed, perfume heavy. "Sorry, the investor dinner ran late," she said, dropping her purse. I looked up and smiled. "No worries. I warmed up your leftovers." She blinked. For a moment, just a flicker, I think she thought I knew. But then she smiled back. That same smile from our first meeting. That same look that used to make my heart race. Now it just made me want to vomit. She kissed me on the cheek and went to change. And I sat there, smiling too. Because while she was busy with her affair, I'd already started drafting the email. It was a simple message addressed to the board of directors, with a discreet CC to the legal team, and a blind copy to a few carefully selected journalists and key competitors. Evidence of expense fraud, conflict of interest, undisclosed relationships with entities that stood to gain from the upcoming merger. I saved the draft. I wanted one more thing to fall into place. 3 days later, it did. Our company announced a press conference for the acquisition deal, one Damien had staked his reputation on. He was about to walk onto a stage in front of every major outlet in the tech world and announce a deal that would define his legacy. And that morning, the very morning of the event, I hit send. The morning of the acquisition announcement. Cameras being set up outside our corporate headquarters. Damien's face was already on half a dozen industry news sites, hailed as a visionary for pushing the company into uncharted markets. He wore his best suit that day, dark navy, tailored sharp. His tie was a deep red, the kind that screams power. He walked through the lobby like a king returning to his court. He even nodded at me. "Big day," he said. I nodded back. Biggest one yet. It took everything in me not to laugh. Because what he didn't know was that, 10 minutes earlier, every board member had received an anonymous email titled, "Urgent. Confidential information regarding the integrity of the current acquisition." Attached were dozens of files. Receipts, invoices, metadata, bank statements tied to shell accounts, private communications between Damien and several third-party vendors, including one linking directly back to Claire's name on a real estate lease. It wasn't just bad. It was career-ending. And it wasn't just sent to the board. The legal team received it too, and a select few journalists with a history of uncovering corporate fraud. It happened fast, faster than I thought it would. 2 hours before the press conference, there was a meeting behind closed doors. Damien never came out. I saw 2 of our legal counsels arrive, both carrying thick folders. The CFO was on a call in the hallway, face pale, pacing like a trapped animal. The press was told the announcement was postponed due to last-minute developments. At home, Claire hadn't said anything yet. She had no idea her world was about to cave in. That night, she came home early. Her face was pale, eyes wide. I was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of wine. I didn't look at her when she walked in. "Marcus, did you hear what happened today?" I swirled the wine gently. "Depends. What are you talking about?" She stepped closer. "Damien, the acquisition. They're saying he might get suspended. Something about financial misconduct." I finally turned to face her, raised an eyebrow. "Wow, that's unexpected." She stared at me, and then, like a flicker of panic beneath the surface, her voice dropped. "They think someone leaked confidential files to the board. They're doing a full audit. It's a mess." I sipped my wine and leaned against the counter. Shame. That deal meant a lot to him. And then, I swear, I saw it happen. A tiny twitch in her jaw, a faint flush in her cheeks. She knew, but she knew something was off. And I was standing there, calm as ever. The next day, Damien was placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation. That same afternoon, 3 news outlets published scathing reports about his financial ties to undisclosed vendors. One even mentioned unverified but credible rumors of personal misconduct involving a subordinate spouse. The story exploded. Stock prices dipped. The company scrambled for damage control. The board began emergency sessions. And Damien? He vanished. No public statement. No press conference. No apology. Just silence. But that wasn't the best part. The best part came 3 days later, when Claire came home in tears. I was on the porch when she pulled into the driveway. She got out of the car slowly, her face blotchy, makeup smudged. She walked up to me like a ghost. "I need to talk to you." I didn't move, just looked at her. She sat down on the step beside me and put her face in her hands. "He broke up with me," she whispered. There it was. The confession. I didn't say a word, just let her unravel. He said I ruined his life, that I was the reason everything came out, that I must have leaked something. I swear I didn't. He just panicked. "He's gone, Marcus. He left town. He won't answer my calls." I stared straight ahead. Felt nothing. She kept talking. I was stupid. I didn't mean for it to happen. He was there, and I was lonely, and you were always working, and don't, I said quietly. She stopped. I turned to look at her. Eyes red, hands trembling, her whole world in pieces. "You don't get to blame this on loneliness. Or me. You chose this. You picked your side." She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "Don't. Just don't." She stared at me, and I saw it, the moment it all clicked for her. The way I wasn't surprised. The calm in my voice. The edge in my silence. "Marcus," she whispered. "Did you?" I smiled. "All I did was give people the truth." She covered her mouth. "You destroyed him." "No," I replied. "He destroyed himself. I just made sure everyone saw it." Her voice broke. "But you." He blamed me. He told them I gave him the files. He told people I was collateral, I said. "That's all you ever were to him." Silence. She lost her job the next week. Not officially because of Damien, but we both knew the truth. She begged me to stay, said we could fix it, that we could start over. But I wasn't angry anymore. Anger's for people who still care. I had nothing left to give her. Nothing left to say. 2 weeks later, I packed my things, left the keys on the counter, took my old truck, a bag of clothes, and drove north to the mountains. Somewhere quiet. She texted once. Just one word, "Why?" I found a cabin up in the Adirondacks. Just a small A-frame tucked between tall pines. There was no internet. No cable. Just heat from the fireplace, a beat-up record player, and the sound of snow cracking under boots in the early mornings. And that was enough. The first week, I didn't do much. I'd wake up late, drink coffee with shaking hands, walk along frozen trails, my breath fogging in the air, my thoughts tangled in loops of memory. Her voice still lived in my head, not the Claire from the end, but the Claire from the beginning. The girl who danced barefoot in the kitchen, who wore my hoodie to bed and stole the blankets, who once cried during a commercial because the dog looked lonely. I hated that I missed her. Hated that I could still love someone who buried a knife so deep in my back I could feel it when I breathed. But grief doesn't play fair. You don't get to choose what you mourn. You just do. I thought a lot about Damien, too. About how fast it all unraveled. He was so sure of himself. So untouchable. And in the end, it took one email to bring it all down. Funny how a man can build an empire on lies and never see the truth coming until it's already at his throat. Last I heard, he was living overseas. He didn't just lose his job. He lost the illusion of being invincible. One night, about a month after I left, I pulled a box from the bottom of my duffel bag. It had been with me the whole time. I just hadn't opened it. Inside were a few things I couldn't quite part with. Photos, old birthday cards, a tie she bought me for our first anniversary, and a folded letter. My wedding vows. I don't know why I kept them. Maybe to remember who I was. Maybe to grieve the version of myself I had to bury. I read the letter one last time. I walked out into the snow, barefoot, holding the letter in one hand, a lighter in the other. And when it was done, I stood there for a long time. Breathing. Just breathing. Healing doesn't come all at once. Some mornings, I woke up and felt like a ghost. Like the version of me that existed before Claire was still out there somewhere, trying to find his way home. Other days, I felt strong, quietly proud of the man who didn't just survive the storm, but stood in it, looked it in the eye, and chose to walk away. Then I set up the internet. I started working again, remotely, part-time, consulting. Turns out, when your name isn't tied to scandal and your resume has results, people come calling. They offered corner offices in new cities. Big money. New titles. I said no. I didn't need skyscrapers or polished boardrooms anymore. I needed peace. And here, in the mountains, I found it. One morning, I got a letter. No return address. Just a plain envelope. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. I hope one day you find someone who deserves the man you were with me. No signature. But I knew the handwriting. I folded the paper once, neatly, and placed it in the fire without hesitation. Because forgiveness doesn't mean giving someone access to your heart again. Sometimes it just means letting go, for good. The past no longer owned me. And the future? It was mine to build. Brick by brick. Step by step. It's been a year since I left. 12 months since I packed a single bag. I thought I'd feel lost. But I've never been more certain of who I am. Last I heard, Damien was living in Prague, consulting for small startups desperate enough to take a chance on a disgraced former exec. I doubt they know the whole story, but that's none of my concern. He's gone. And more importantly, he's forgotten. Claire faded, too. I never followed her online. Never checked her profiles. I didn't need updates. I didn't want to know. But word travels, even up here in the mountains. An old colleague of mine reached out recently. Said she'd applied for a mid-level job at a firm he was advising. Her resume looked great, until her name triggered a memory. He called me. I didn't trash her. Didn't warn him away. I just said, she's a talented person, but she's made some choices that follow her. That was enough. No job offer came. Actions have consequences. If she ever drives past our old apartment, if she remembers the birthdays I never missed, the dinners I cooked, the way I held her when she cried after a long day, does she feel guilty? Does she feel anything? I'll never know. And I don't need to. The cabin's different now. It's filled with pieces of who I've become. Books I never had time to read. Art I never thought I'd enjoy. New furniture, handmade from what I cut and sanded myself. It's not much, but it's mine. Every inch of it. Built by my hands. Shaped by my pain. Owned by no one but me. I go into town once a week now. Small place. One diner. One general store. A bar where the same 5 locals sit every night and tell stories they've told 1,000 times. They know me now. Not by what I used to be, VP, strategist, husband. Just Marcus. I like that. I help the mechanics sometimes. An older guy named Bill who never asks questions he doesn't really want answered. And every so often, I sit by the lake with a notebook, writing down pieces of what happened. Not because I want to relive it, but because I never want to forget what it taught me. Here's what I've learned. People will show you who they are. Eventually. Always. And loyalty? Loyalty should never be blind. Because some people wear love like a costume, and if you're not careful, you'll fall in love. What I have now is worth more than anything they took from me. The freedom to live honestly. To love again someday, when the time is right. With someone who chooses me without hesitation or secrecy. The past has a strange way of finding you, especially when you think you've outrun it. A letter in the mail. This one came on a rainy Thursday morning. I was fixing a loose panel on the porch when I heard the soft whir of the postman's truck rolling down the gravel road. He usually waved and kept going, barely 3 mailboxes up this way. But this time he stopped, dropped a single envelope into the box. No bills, no ads, just one envelope. No return address. My name scrawled across it in handwriting I hadn't seen in a long time. I didn't open it right away. I carried it inside, set it on the kitchen table, Poured coffee. I knew who it was from. Even before I read the first line, I knew. Marcus, if you're reading this, I guess I finally found the courage to send it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect anything. I just need you to know the truth. It was Claire. Her voice was all over the page. Soft. Hesitant. Still trying to make things right long after the damage had been done. I kept reading. When everything fell apart, when Damien left, when I lost my job, when you walked away, I thought I deserved it. I still do. But not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about what I did to you. I know I shattered the trust of the only person who loved me. And I hate myself for that. She talked about therapy, about guilt, about waking up in cold sweats, hearing my voice in dreams where I said nothing. Just looked at her with the same expression I wore the day she confessed. She said she wanted to fix herself, that she was working at a nonprofit now, barely making rent, but trying, for the first time in her life, truly trying to become someone worth being. Then, at the end, she wrote something that made my throat tighten. You were right, you know. He never would have chosen me in the long run. You saw the real me, and I threw that away. There was no phone number, no plea to talk, just the letter. I read it twice, then once more, then folded it slowly and slid it into the drawer where I kept old keys, spare batteries, and things I wasn't ready to throw away, but couldn't bear to look at either. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in the silence, letting her words echo in the space between memory and peace. It didn't change anything, but it did remind me of something I hadn't felt in a long time. It's easy to think healing ends when the pain stops, but that's not how it works. A week after the letter arrived, I got a call from a former colleague, someone I used to trust, one of the few who stayed neutral. I heard about Claire's letter, he said. I paused. How? She sent one to me too, he said, and to a few others. She's trying, man. I don't know if it means anything, but I figured you should know. I got mine, I said, and I read it. A pause on the line. That's all. That's enough. That night, I walked down to the lake. It was cold. I stood at the edge, watching the moon ripple in the water. And for the first time since it all began, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel before. Not sadness, not anger, forgiveness, for trusting too deeply, for staying too long, for hoping when I should have walked away, because he didn't know, and he loved honestly, and that's nothing to regret. I stayed by the lake for hours. The call came on a Monday afternoon. I'd just finished stacking wood near the side shed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Marcus. The voice was sharp, professional, female, a little breathless, like she was used to people hanging on her words. This is Jessica Lowell, managing director at Axiom Partners. We've never met, but your name was passed to me through one of our board advisors. I didn't say anything. She continued. We've got a situation, a deal gone sideways. We need someone who's not afraid of red tape, someone who understands corporate strategy. I blinked, stepping outside for air. I'm not interested, I said. That's what he said you'd say, she replied. He also said you might want to know who's on the other side of the table. She paused, then dropped the name. Damien Cole. I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, watching a hawk circle silently overhead. He's resurfaced, she added, working with a private capital firm. But his name still raises eyebrows. We believe he's trying to use a shell company to negotiate entry into a European clean tech merger. The problem is, he's doing it under someone else's name. Why me? I asked. Because you already did it once. And because no one knows his blind spots like you do. That was true. I thanked her for the call and said I'd think about it. She offered to fly me in, first class, all expenses paid. I told her I'd let her know by the end of the week. Then I hung up and sat on the porch until the sun dipped below the trees, wondering what kind of man I was now, and whether he was ready to stare the devil in the eyes again. For 3 days, I barely slept. Not because of fear, but because part of me wanted it. Not the revenge. That part was done. But the confrontation. The final, undeniable moment where I could look Damien in the face and let him see that he didn't win. Not even close. I dug out the old files. The reports. The emails. The trails of lies I'd uncovered. The ones I never even used. I'd only needed a fraction of what I had to bring him down the first time. What I never told anyone was that I'd save the rest. The deeper corruption. The more dangerous ties. Because I knew men like Damien didn't vanish, they regrouped. And I wanted to be ready. On the 4th day, I called Jessica back. Told her I'd take the meeting, under one condition. my terms. I wasn't coming to play politics. I wasn't there to make a name for myself. I was coming to end his game for good. She agreed. I booked the flight, packed a single bag, left a note on the table, and he drove toward the airport with a heart steady as stone. The meeting took place in a private suite in a Manhattan skyscraper, the kind where the windows are taller than most apartments and everything smells like ambition. I walked in wearing jeans, a jacket that smelled like pine, and boots still dusted with mountain dirt. Let them see exactly how far I'd come. Damien wasn't in the room yet. Jessica introduced herself, sharp eyes, firm handshake. She didn't waste words, and I respected that. "Do you want to see the deal files first?" she asked. "No need," I said. "I already know what I'm looking for." When he walked in, I didn't flinch. Damien looked smaller, older, still polished, but with a tremble in his posture he hadn't had before. His eyes met mine, and for the first time in his life, he blinked. "Marcus," he said, trying for a smirk. "Didn't expect to see you in the game again." I sat back in the chair, arms folded. "I'm not in the game," I replied. The meeting was short. I laid out everything. The new shell company, the falsified vendor certifications, the connection to a firm blacklisted 5 years ago for laundering funds through real estate development projects, the same firm tied to Claire's old condo. He paled when I said her name, not as a threat, just a reminder. A ghost in his closet, the woman he used, blamed, and discarded. I ended with a single question. "How many people are you planning to bury this time before they bury you?" He didn't answer. Didn't need to. His silence said it all. I left the room without shaking his hand. Jessica caught up with me near the elevator. "You were right," she said quietly. "He won't survive this one." I nodded. "He shouldn't." She hesitated, then added, "If you ever want back in, really back in, I can open some doors." I smiled politely. "I've already got everything I need." And with that, I stepped into the elevator and watched the city disappear behind mirrored walls. On the flight home, I didn't feel triumphant. The cabin was just as I'd left it. Firewood stacked neatly, dishes clean in the sink. A note I wrote to myself before leaving, folded on the table. "Don't forget who you are." I read it again, even though I already knew the words by heart. Then I opened the windows and let the mountain air wash away the smell of cities, elevators. I was back, and for the first time in years, nothing was chasing me. The next morning, I hiked down to the lake. The same trail I'd walked 100 times, the same rock I sat on during the worst nights. I didn't expect anyone to find me out here. That was the point. It was a letter. Another one. The handwriting wasn't Claire's. I opened it carefully. It read, "Mr. Grant, I don't know you personally, but I know what you did. You probably don't remember me. I was an intern at your old firm during your last year there. I was the quiet one in the corner during strategy reviews, always taking notes. But I remember you, not just because you were smart, but because you were decent. You looked people in the eye. You remembered names. You treated the receptionist the same way you treated the boardroom. When everything with Damien blew up, most people ran for cover. But the truth got out because of you. I know you never claimed credit, but some of us know. Some of us remember. That letter probably doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of your life. But I wanted to say thank you." Ava, I sat on the porch for a long time after that. Letter in my lap. It had been so long since I felt like the choices I made mattered to anyone but me. But apparently, someone noticed. You never really know what seeds you've planted. That afternoon, I went into town to restock some supplies. While I was there, I saw her. Not Claire. Someone new. She was helping an older man load bags of feed into a pickup. Hair tied back, boots scuffed, hands strong and steady. We locked eyes for a second. Not long. Just long enough for something to flicker. A smile. She nodded politely, and I nodded back. Then I walked inside the store. Maybe this was what starting over looked like. Not grand gestures. Not whirlwind romances. Just simple moments that didn't hurt to feel. That night, I lit a fire in the hearth and poured a glass of bourbon. The letter from Ava sat on the table beside me. And for the first time in what felt like years, I allowed myself to think about the future, not as something I needed to rebuild, but something I could shape however I wanted. There was no deadline now. No one to impress. No one to prove wrong. Just days ahead. I picked up my old notebook, the one I started writing in when Claire left, and flipped through the pages. So much of it was pain, anger, shame, strategy. But now there was space for something else. Something new. I turned to a fresh page and wrote 4 words. who I chose to become. The knock came just after dusk. I was sitting on the porch, the fire in the pit burning low, sipping coffee laced with bourbon, watching the stars fade into view above the trees. It was a soft knock. Claire. She stood on the porch with a coat too thin for the mountain air and eyes that looked like they hadn't rested in weeks. Her hair was longer. She didn't speak at first, just looked at me, as if trying to figure out who I'd become. I didn't ask why she came, didn't invite her in, just stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She took that as her answer. We sat on the porch steps, 2 feet apart, the silence between us heavier than anything we could have said. Finally, she broke it. I didn't know if you'd still be here. I nodded. I figured you'd come eventually. Her breath caught. She looked down at her hands, which were shaking just slightly. I'm not here to ask for anything. I needed to say it. To your face. One last time. She looked at me then, and in her eyes, I saw everything. I was selfish, she said. I was stupid. I let something good die because I didn't know how to appreciate what I had. And then I watched everything fall apart, and I still blamed everyone but myself. I didn't interrupt. She wasn't wrong. I've spent the last year trying to fix the version of me that destroyed us, she continued. Not for you. Not for him. For me. Because I couldn't live with who I was. I took a slow breath. You don't owe me that, I said. She blinked. I don't. No, I said. She looked away, wiping her face with the sleeve of her coat. We sat there a while longer. I'm sorry for everything, she said again, her voice small. I looked at her, not with anger, not with love, just with a kind of distant understanding. I know. She hesitated, then walked to her car without another word. I didn't watch her drive away. After she left, I stayed out on the porch. The quiet felt heavier now. I woke the next morning to sunlight. The air smelled like pine and thawing earth, like the end of winter. I brewed coffee, stepped outside, and let the light hit my face. They weren't the end of my story. The cabin is mine now, not just in deed, but in spirit. My fingerprints are everywhere. The hand-carved shelves. The bench I built under the cedar tree. The window panes I replaced myself during the first snowstorm. Claire never reached out again. I think that final visit burned the last bridge she hoped might still be standing. As for Damien, he disappeared again. The European deal collapsed after the firm uncovered what I handed over. His name was scrubbed from the press releases. Investors pulled out, and his involvement was buried so deep in legal red tape, it'll never rise again. He doesn't haunt me, and neither do I. I've started writing again. Not just in my notebook, but really writing. Stories. I send them to a small magazine based out of Vermont. The editor reached out last week, said they want to publish a few. Asked for a photo, a bio. I sent one sentence. She replied with a smile emoji and a contract. I guess that means something. The woman from the feed store, the one who smiled once and walked away, her name's Elena. Nothing serious. Just coffee when we both happen to be in town. Walks around the lake. No rush. Just 2 people who know what it means to hurt and what it means to keep living anyway. And maybe that's enough.